Welcome to Red Flags with Elissa.
Welcome to Red Flags with Elissa. I'm your host, Abigail Vaca, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this enlightening journey through the intricate world of medical spa law. Today, we have a special treat for you in our second episode, as we're joined by the brilliant Elissa Brewster, a managing attorney with extensive experience in this unique field. Elissa is here to illuminate the complexities and critical legal considerations that come with operating a successful medical spa. In this episode, we'll be unlocking the power of MSOs, the secret weapon for thriving medical spas in today's evolving legal landscape. We'll explore what an MSO is, why it's vital for medical spa owners, and how it can support effective management of practices. Join us as Elissa dispels common misconceptions about MSOs and shares insights on the legal risks and challenges that arise when they're absent. We'll also discuss how MSOs can streamline operations in areas like staffing, billing, and marketing, helping spa owners focus on what they do best. So if you're ready to gain valuable insights and practical advice on navigating the world of MSOs, grab your notepad and let's dive into today's episode, Unlocking the Power of MSOs, the Secret to Thriving Medical Spas. Elissa, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
So to start, can you explain what an MSO is and why it's such a critical component for medical spas in today's legal landscape?
So an MSO is a management service organization. And the function of an MSO is to do all of the administrative work for the medical spa, because a medical spa can only be owned by a physician. And so typically, if there's a nurse or an investor or a lay person that wants to be able to receive the benefit and the revenue, partnering with a medical spa, the best way to do that is through an MSO. So an MSO is formed that can be 100% owned by a layperson or a group of investors, and we're going to divide that up however they want, okay? But the function of that MSO is to do the management for the medical spa.
So I'm guessing that many people in the medical spa industry may be unfamiliar with the concept of an MSO. Can you break down its role and how it supports medical spa owners in managing their practices effectively?
Sure. So the purpose of the MSO, again, is only admin. So that is going to mean, and I usually tell people, like, yeah, you're buying the donuts and the coffee and the pens and the pencils, but it's also the EMR system. It's also the forms. It could be managing the website. And so, again, everything that is administrative. It is that back office manager type of role, hiring people, firing people, having SOPs or whatever to run the business. It has nothing to do with the clinical side of things. And so that MSO can do advertising, all the things. And as a result of doing all things administrative, they will be able to garnish a percentage of the revenue from the medical spa. That's the agreement. That's the link between the MSO and the med spa, and that's through a management services agreement, or an MSA as it is commonly known as. And so in that MSA, it's going to detail all the things. Anything that you can possibly think of is going to be in that MSA for the administration of the medical spa. And as a result of that, typically MSO can get anywhere from 40 to 60% of the gross monthly revenue from that medical spa, because they're really doing everything that isn't clinical.
Interesting. So, what are some other common misconceptions about MSOs, and how do you help your clients navigate through those misunderstandings to make sure that they're fully compliant with regulations?
So a lot of people have heard of an MSO, may not necessarily know what it is. They think that the MSO is the med spa. And so when people will come to me, they'll have like this fancy name for their entity. And they're like, oh, I formed this with my husband and we're so excited to have this med spa. And it's like, yeah, that's going to have to be your MSO. And so your med spa name is going to have to be something completely different in order to differentiate, because again, the med spa has to be 51% owned by a physician. So typically what I tell people is to put the name consulting, management, or administration in the title of your MSO. So then that way, when we're contracting, it is going to be very clear and very distinct on who is doing what. Okay. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. Something else that I would mention is that the way I explain how MSOs function is, think of it as like an agency. And so if you had a nursing agency or a bookkeeping agency, and you have your agency and you are going to send bookkeepers out to different companies, right? To be different bookkeepers in company A, B, C, and D, you can do that. It's the exact same thing with an MSO. So that MSO can be the management service organization for Med Spa A. They could also be one for Med Spa B. They can also be one for Med Spa C, because all they're doing is the administrative. Now, those would be three separate contracts, right? Because you're having three separate admins that you're doing, but it's really the behind the scenes. So if an agency or a consulting group, management group wanted to manage a variety of medical spas because they're really good at doing it, then they can do that. And that to me is the easiest way in which to explain it, that you're really just kind of farming yourself out to a bunch of different entities, and to think of yourself as wholly separate, like down the street and around the corner and down the block. Like, you are not a part of this medical spa. You are just coming in, you're a resource or a vendor coming in to help with the administrative aspects of it.
In your experience, what are the legal risks or challenges faced by medical spas when they don't have an MSO in place? And how do you mitigate those risks?
So if there's not an MSO in place, then what that traditionally will tell me is that that medical spa may not have been formed correctly. It could be where a bunch of people got together with a doctor, or they got together and like, oh, we all we need is a medical director. So if it is not put together in the way that I've described, then you are non-compliant with the corporate practice of medicine. That affects not only the physician, but also the non-physicians that have employed that physician, because essentially what that's equating to is, you don't want a corporation, this is in theory, okay, that you don't want a corporation driving medical decisions. That's why I said theory. So it's a theory. So you don't want, in theory, corporations driving medical decisions. The entity or the people that should be driving medical decisions are medical doctors. And so if a corporation is owned by medical doctors, that's a different conversation. But if it's not, then you're in violation of that corporate practice of medicine, because that corporation, whose only goal is to make revenue, so then that corporation is driving decisions that are going to have long-term or short-term healthcare effects for that individual patient. And in doing so, that corporation is practicing medicine. And that's not what we want, in theory.
So it sounds like you're saying MSOs are often seen as a solution to the business side of running a medical spa. Can you share how they help with the more operational aspects of a medical spa, like staffing and billing and marketing?
Yes. So that all again goes back to the administrative arm of what the MSO is doing. So the MSO is going to be in charge of the advertising. They can do the hiring of the receptionist, of the non-clinical people, anything or anyone that is going to be hired by the clinic or the medical spa to perform clinical duties has to be hired by the medical spa. They can't be hired by the MSO because, again, MSO is not doing anything clinical. So the person that's taking your vitals, right? What's your height, your weight? What medications are you on? Whether that's a nurse or a med tech or whomever is doing that, that's a clinical job, right? The administrative side of that is taking that file, and I'm old school, so I know there probably aren't paper files anymore, but taking that file and filing it in whatever filing system to be able to find, Elisa's file when we need it. The medical aspect is making sure that the file is up to date, that all the notes and that the orders and everything are in that file. My job as the admin would be to make sure that it's in there properly, right? That it's chronologically in there, or however, to make it easier for that physician or that nurse to be able to read the notes. So that's why I do that kind of line of demarcation, which is a little fuzzy sometimes because the clinic is going to be ordering the drugs, right? That's not something that the MSO could do because that's a clinical thing. And typically, with whatever type of drugs or vitamins, or if it's the weight loss or whatever, you're going to need an NPI number associated with that. The MSO does not have an NPI number because they're not doing anything clinical, right? So for me, that just kind of driving home that point and giving enough examples so that the nurses or whomever that's assisting with the clinic really understands, oh, I'm wearing an admin hat now. If I'm wearing not a medical admin hat, right, which is like making sure the charts are up to date, but a full on admin hat. Hi, welcome in, how are you? Would you like some water? Would you like some coffee? you know um, those duties belong to the MSO. And as soon as those things are mixed up, as soon as those things are not clearly defined, then you run the risk of violating the corporate practice of medicine doctrine.
You got me thinking when you mentioned the shift from paper to virtual files. How do you see the MSO evolving in the medical spa industry kind of in the same light? And are there any emerging trends coming out?
So I would definitely say most healthcare facilities and entities have some type of electronic medical record or electronic health record, EMR, HMR system, right? In terms of being able to have access to that system, that can go a couple of ways. That the MSO has a license, has a contract with a system. It could be Epic, it could be Cerner, it could be, those are kind of like the two big ones. There could be something else out there, Cubs or whatever. There will be a contract between that EMR system and the MSO to use that system and to have access. That's typically like an end user agreement or an SAS agreement. And so that is really the way, healthcare is going. Everybody has the iPad and you're filling out, whatever, and that's automatically going to get dumped into some kind of online cloud platform or what have you. That's the EMR. And the MSO will need limited access to that in order to do billing, right? In order to make sure that if you accept insurance, that you paid your copay. If you don't accept insurance, that you paid whatever the fee was, right? And making sure that all of those things are taken care of. So even with that EMR system, you still have to be compliant. It still has to be secure. You're still not going to be allowed to, just willy-nilly send something to somebody's Yahoo account if they didn't ask for it, or if it's not a secured account. That's when you have to, sign in with your eye and your fingerprint, like all the different things. That's really to make sure that we are giving this personal information to the right person, or to whomever as a patient I have designated this other person to receive this information. So those things have not gone away. Like those things are still very prevalent, even if you have patients in rooms, making sure that there are no identifying markers so that Elissa Brewster is in there getting Botox. Like, maybe I don't want you to know that, and I don't have any Botox, but I'm just, or if I'm getting an IV cocktail because I partied too much last night, maybe I don't want you to know that, right? And so my privacy has to be kept between my medical providers and myself, and the MSO has to be able to honor that and to make sure that they are compliant with those regulations as well.
Interesting. So, for medical spa owners just starting out, what are the top legal considerations when deciding whether or not to work with them or form an MSO?
Oh, well, you have to form an MSO. Like that's a non-negotiable. Are there exceptions to that rule? Of course. And there are like very nuanced exceptions to that, right? But generally speaking, an MSO needs to be formed if there's a medical spa to which the physician is 51% ownership. Now, if the physician wants to own everything, again, that's a nuance that has to be explored, because then you want to make sure that you're not violating kickback laws, and there are state and federal kickback laws, because we want to make sure that the physician, again, this is in theory, the physician is not only recommending a certain treatment because they're going to receive money back, right? They're going to be receiving a kickback. We want physicians to recommend treatment because it's going to be for the benefit of that particular patient. And if a physician does have an ownership interest, that needs to be disclosed. So if you go to the doctor and they say, go to this MRI center over here, or go to this lab, they have to disclose to you that they have an ownership interest, and that you don't have to necessarily, go there, but know that I own 50% of it, right? Or you can go to any one of these other ones. So it's really up to that patient. But I, as a patient, need to be informed that the doctor or the doctor's family has ownership interest in all of these things. So either way, the money's coming back to me, right? So that's the purpose of that. We want the patient to be an informed consumer.
That makes sense. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you. Note, stay out of the red flag.
Will do. Thank you for joining us for Red Flags with Elissa Brewster. You can find her on brewsterlawtx.com.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.